Hi, I'm Kaja Monet. I'm a marketing intern at Coursicle, and I'm here with our founder and CEO, Joe Puccio.
It's good to be here.
Why did you start Coursicle?
When I was an incoming freshman at UNC, I spent 7 hours planning my class schedule, and then I went to register for classes, and I got into one of the 5 I needed to take. So that night, I wrote a program that would notify me when a class I wanted had an open seat, and then I let one of my friends use it, and they got into their classes using it. One of my friends suggested opening up to other students, and so we did that. After some initial difficulties, we ended up starting to grow very quickly. We had like 900 people the first semester, 1,800 the next, and it just kept doubling. And we were just at UNC for 3 years. My co-founder, she suggested helping students with the other part of registration, which was the planning your class schedule part. And that was originally just taking all of the course data that UNC had, making a site that was very easy to search for classes, and then the next summer we added the ability to plan out a mock schedule, class schedule, because students prior to that had been using Excel or writing it out on paper and that kind of thing, which is obviously very big hindrance to planning your schedule. It can be very overwhelming. It was very much for me. And so we were just at UNC for 3 years, and then when we were graduating, I wanted to keep working on it full time. So we started to expand to other schools, and fast forwarding to now, we're at 1,300 colleges, 700,000 users. We're running off of revenue.
How did your mental health affect Coursicle startup journey? I know you've been super transparent about it online.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So when I was in high school, I struggled a lot. I have a very poor memory, so I struggled a lot with remembering assignments, when tests were and that kind of thing. And one thing I remember when I was registering for classes, I go through high school and all of your class schedule is completely set. And then you finally get to college and you're like, great, I have all these choices. There are tens of thousands of different courses that I can take. And so, I spent all night planning that schedule. And then when I went to register, when I only got into one of the 5, it was very distressing. For one, you feel like that freedom has been completely curtailed. Like you were expecting to have so many options and they're just taking away. And I remember after registering, I was like so mentally distraught. And there's like 30 people in this computer lab. It was very stressful because at like 12 p.m. or whatever, they would just say go, and everyone would like click to register as quickly as possible. And then, you just see didn't get in, right? I remember I was just like, I think I had stayed up all night, so I was already sleep deprived, and I was very stressed by this outcome, because it can, the registration can have a big impact on your semester.
Yeah, for sure. And
I was so distraught. I didn't even know where to click. Like, I was the last one in the computer lab. Everyone else left. And whoever was doing it, the orientation leaders, they had to be like, okay, you have to click here. I've been using computers my entire life. I've never had trouble using interfaces, but I was just so mentally overwhelmed that I had no idea, what to do. And I just went back into my car and just was crying. It was like very overwhelming for me. So I think that and I think you see this a lot, is that people with learning disabilities or, maybe anxiety or depression, they feel all the feels stronger. Like it was a lot harder for me to do something like this. And I don't think it's uncommon for them to be motivated or driven and understand the pain points well enough to be the ones to create a product to ameliorate that. And it just so happens that, people who don't have those disabilities also benefit a lot from it. So I think that mental health was very core to the founding. And, obviously I went through a lot of stuff and was very public about that, like you mentioned. And I think that, originally a lot of people in my life, especially, I'm in the millennial generation, that's a lot less accepted as it is now to be open about that. And I think that there was a lot of, resistance to what I was doing, being open about my mental health. But I think it's been a draw to not only users, but also employees, of course. Like, it is something that I think is unique about us, that this is kind of a core value that we have. And I'm very happy that I was open about it. And I think it ended up being a very good thing for Coursicle.
I think that there's a lot of people who can relate to that, and to know that you started this for them is probably also helpful. You also are very transparent about wealth disparity, and that being one of the values that Coursicle is based upon. So why do you care so much about it? Where did that come from?
I grew up in middle class, maybe a little bit more like upper middle class. And a lot of my friends were lower middle or middle class. And so there was this kind of awareness that I had early on that, that there was that there was this disparity and it had a big impact. And, one of my friends, he had food insecurity and he would often come to my house. He's probably spent like 3 days a week at my house, and I'd make him pasta and we'd play video games and that kind of thing. And having friends who were below the poverty line, I think being exposed to them, being friends with them, and then having people who were, very, very wealthy, being around people like that, you saw, you just witnessed that disparity and you're aware of it. And I think that that's something that a lot of people aren't even aware of. Like people who grow up upper class or around upper class people, they can't really understand what it's like, having food insecurity or not knowing, having so much uncertainty that comes with being poor in SF. When I was living in San Francisco, that was like grotesque wealth disparity. I mean, you'd have like a street. I lived pretty close to it, a street where it was like a single city block, and there would just be like 50 or 70 homeless people lining in sleeping bags along that block. You don't even see that really that often in New York, at least in Manhattan. And then 3 blocks away, you'd have like the most wealthy people on the planet living, right? Yeah. And I think that, you might have a region of San Francisco where you've got the average income is $20,000 and then the neighboring is like $250,000. And I think that the treatment that I saw of those who were poor in SF had a big impact. Like the tech people that I would talk to, they saw it as like a con of living in the city. They didn't see that they were partially responsible. Yeah. And I remember one key point was one of my friends who works for organizing unions at companies. He told me that 80% of the homeless people in San Francisco previously lived in San Francisco. It's not like they came to SF because it was a nice climate and it was a good place to, to live outside. They previously had apartments or homes in SF. And so that just really showed the consequence of the tech people moving in and pricing them out. So that was, I think, a precursor. And then when I moved to New York, it was not as bad as it was in San Francisco, but I started to, I hung out a lot and I've talked about this online, Washington Square Park, which I think is a beautiful amalgam of all different kinds of people. All 5 boroughs, people come out to hang out there. And usually I think that it kind of skews poor, I would say, the people who there are poor. And I think that's partly because like it's one of the places, parks are one of the places in New York where you can gather for free. Like you can't go to a bar and hang out, right? Because you have to pay. So I think that it's a natural place for people to convene, especially during COVID, people to convene. And, I made a lot of friends, people who, a lot of whom were homeless. And one thing that was remarkable to me is how often the people who have a lot of money are so reluctant to give any of it away. They're very stingy and they're also thinking about money a lot. And the people who are homeless or not well off, they're incredibly generous people. Like,
always.
Yeah. And it's a remarkable thing. And it's, it's very counterintuitive. And, something as simple as like someone coming up to one of my friends and asking if they can bum a cigarette. They're always like, yeah, sure. Where that, if someone who maybe is more well off, they're not as comfortable doing that, which is just such a strange thing because that's nothing to them. Whereas, these people, just having a pack of cigarettes is like, oh, this is a good day. I was able to, buy a pack or something. Seeing both sides, I think, is why it became something that I cared about. And it's something that I think is incredibly societally important too. The wealth gap is widening and there's an increasing resentment towards that disparity. And I don't really see too much movement towards this politically, but hopefully there will be attempts to close that gap. And I think it will take, political change rather than, because obviously there's not going to be any change from the corporations.
It's no secret that you're a very public person. You have a blog and you are very open online. So why do you choose to be that way and where does that come from?
I've always been a very candid person, very upfront, direct, and open with people. And I think that when I went through my first bout of severe anxiety in 2019, I think that you kind of like, I don't know, when you're in that state, like you can't really put up a facade. Like you're biology is like, you know, having you, I don't know what the fuck I'm saying right now, but like,
Yeah.
you know, there's something about when I was going through that period, you know, you couldn't really like hide how you were feeling, right? It's just like it's visceral, it's evident. And so, you know, my friends, they would see how I was struggling, you know? So I guess I'll say, so I've always been very candid and upfront. In my personal life, I was always like that. And then when I went through my mental health crisis in 2021, 2022, it's a very strange thing about bipolar is like this common feature of people with it where they want to like evangelize and spread whatever they're thinking. And I mean, obviously I've, you know, been non-symptomatic bipolar my entire life. So maybe there was periods, you know, pieces of that were coming about prior to the episode. But having done that and then being received, it wasn't scary for me at the time because it just felt like the natural thing to do, but very scary thing for most people to just open up. But the reception that I got from it was just so overwhelmingly positive because I think a lot of the things that I was saying resonated with people, you know, especially younger people. And so just getting that response and realizing it's not so bad being public, and then the benefit of having these people who are sharing the same experiences and feeling like someone else is experiencing them. And obviously, you know, I'm a very small public figure too, because they've used Coursicle before, you know, and they like Coursicle. Seeing somebody who is in a position like me saying that, it might make them feel more comfortable doing the same thing. And, you know, my essay, you know, I had hundreds of people who were messaging me, you know, saying thank you for sharing your story. They talked about the things that they found, you know, they resonated with them, that they also had experienced.
You're also very vocal about how you feel about founders in general and how you want Coursicle to be set apart from other companies and their founders. I'm about to say the word beef. I cannot say that. What's your...
You can say beef.
Should I? Okay.
It's up to you.
Beef?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, hell yeah.
What's your beef with founders? Why do you think they're evil? And what makes you different?
That also originated from SF. Founders, this is the norm, I would say. Their goal is wealth creation in general. And it's so often it's just like they're not motivated to create something that really helps people. They want to build something, sell it, use that money or whatever to do the next thing. You know, It's just hopping between companies. And that's so common across the board. And, well, for one, I mean, I would say that that's an exacerbation of wealth disparity because also often the people who fund that original endeavor are rich, right? Like even in order to be an investor, you have to have over $1 million in assets. So like necessarily they are rich. But then also it's just, you know, it's such a monetary pursuit that don't really have much respect for that. In terms of how I want Coursicle to be seen differently.
No, what makes you different?
Oh, me different? Oh, shit. I don't want to just like flip Coursicle and make as much money as possible. That's not, we've had acquisition interest and it would make us all very wealthy, but that's just not the motivation. I think that we should be something that actually helps people. That's the point that should be the point of these companies in the first place. And, you know, that at the expense of just trying to make as much money as possible. So that's, I think, something that sets me apart from other founders is just the fact that the end goal is different.
So how do you feel about AI? What impacts do you think it could have on Coursicle? And are you nervous about it at all?
My viewpoint on AI has evolved significantly over even just like the last year. One thing that ties back to what I talked about before is just how often, I mean, you just have all of these companies, all these founders who are just trying to exploit the bubble of AI, whether it's a bubble or not, that's up for debate, but just try to get, you know, fundraising, right? They'll just literally have whatever the domain name they had, now they'll just change it to .ai just to get as much, you know, fundraising as possible. That's bullshit. I hate when companies do that. It's so often they'll spawn up, they'll be around for 6 months and they'll die because they didn't have a market. They were just relying on the hype of AI. So there's that piece. But then I had some resistance to it. You know, every kind of new tool is a little scary at first. But for one, at least on the development side, a huge acceleration of productivity for developers. So that's just undeniable. And so that's been huge for a small team like us. It's like everyone has four hands. One thing that I think companies maybe make the mistake of either in their founding or in their current business is that they'll over apply it. They'll just try to, apply it to everything they do. Oh, like now we can make this better. Now this is enabled, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I think that that's a mistake. They'll create a product and it'll just, be vaporware. They won't actually have anything that people find valuable. For us, there were certain things that were big pain points for us that now, like in terms of its usage, that now is possible. So, I'll give you an example. One thing that we're working on now is creating the first ever data set of every high school and college in the world. That has never been done before. Like, you have these government bodies who...
I'm like, wow, I didn't know that. Wow.
Yeah. So, you have these government bodies who will create, their own kind of list of accredited universities, either in the United States or elsewhere. But, there's no combination of them all. And a lot of times that there's schools, we're also looking at primary, elementary schools that are overlooked. They're not necessarily going to be included. But we've created this, this very complex system where we can create this unique list of every school in the world. And that's going to be very important for us to grow Coursicle because, most, in order to kind of segment users into what their school is, we need to have a list of every school. So we're working right now on bringing that out. So that's one use case where it enabled something that wasn't possible to create something like that. And I think it's not an over application of it. Like this is something that's very core. It's necessary. We would have really tried to do without AI, but now this is, maybe going to be 100 times faster to actually do it. So I think that's a good use case, and companies do you kind of can feel when, its use of AI really elevates the experience. But so often if it's just like, oh, we have a chatbot now or something else, it's just like, no, that's just them trying to raise their next round.
What are your future plans and hopes for Coursicle? Where would you like to see the app go, and how do you hope that it expands?
I see Coursicle as being the school app. It's the app that you download freshman year, whether that's of college or high school, and delete senior year.
Like Hinge.
Yeah. Like Hinge. The goal is really just, trying to make it so that we really own this space and can help students as much as possible. And that can also expand into other facets that you get from having everything all in one place. For instance, your notes, right? Like us just making a very high quality notes app where, you get to class, you open Coursicle, we already know what week of the semester it is. We auto create stuff. Maybe we even auto create stuff based on your Canvas syncing. So, this is the upcoming homework, all this stuff just all in one place. I think it provides a lot of value. And then also I'll say that, and this is something that we've been trying to grow over time, although it's been difficult, is another very unique thing is, you might use reminders, Google Calendar, that kind of thing, but the connectivity of students in Coursicle allows us to take it to a whole nother level. For one, I think a lot of people have, a lot of businesses, they'll have like scope creep. Oh, we're going to do everything, right? And that distracts focus from whatever their niche is. And I'm intent on staying in education because education is very important to me in general. I think it shaped me a lot. I went to a Montessori school when I was younger, and I think that had a very big impact on the way I think and what I work on. And then also, I think that it's just a very important place to be. I think that medtech and edtech are the two most important things that you can work on day to day. For Montessori, what was so unique about it, at least my school in North Carolina, was that you would be in a classroom. First graders, second graders, and third graders would be in a classroom. And that, I think, the kind of the ideology there is just that, like, you can learn from your peers, not just from the teachers. It's really that self-directedness. The fact that you go into a room and you can do whatever you want. You don't, it's not like this grind to work. There wasn't much homework. There were no grades at all. Like the first time I had a grade was when I was a freshman in high school. And that was nice because I think that it wasn't like you didn't feel like there was like this end goal all the time. Like, and I think that's more representative of real life. Like, you know, I think that there's a tendency for many people, especially just people in business, to feel like they're trying to like climb a ladder, right? That's the end of the ideology. You go to a company, you get a raise, you get promoted, then maybe you use your position to get a job at another company, and you just keep climbing this ladder. And there's a philosopher, Alan Watts, who just like kind of talks about the emptiness that you achieve for there. Eventually, you kind of maybe achieve, or maybe at different periods, you achieve what you expected to make you happy, and then you just feel nothing because it wasn't. The end was not the point. It was the journey, and you were supposed to enjoy the journey on the way. And I think that Montessori instilled that a lot in me, a lot, you know, more so than the conventional education system. That self-directedness, like I was able to explore these things that I really cared about. Like there was different periods in 5th grade, I was obsessed with astronomy and particle physics. And so like I had this little talk show with one of my friends, and she and I would like read about, we would like write little notes about, you know, the astronomical figures and all this other kind of stuff. And then we'd have one of our friends videotape it, and we had this little talk show where we would talk about this kind of stuff. And that's just, you know, you do that during the school day. Like that's one of the activities, and the teachers they're supportive of it because it's like we were exploring education, our own interests in education, and at our own pace. And so, you know, I look very fondly at those experiences, and I'm very appreciative, and I'm still in touch with, you know, one of my main teachers there, Peter. He actually came to our NERF event the couple of months.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He was very good. He was very, very good.